Brett, why don't you introduce John, and John, you introduce Brett.
Delighted to introduce my friend John Francis. I know John as a father and as a businessman and as a significant philanthropist. His family was actively involved with building a business called the Auto Trader, which I think you saw a liquidity event a number of years ago, and that gave you an opportunity to come back from New York and look after family money. You were an investment banker, I think, living the life on Wall Street, and came rolling back to Toronto. And I know you've played an incredible role in the social fabric of Toronto in terms of, in particular, the Children's Hospital Foundation, the sick kids. So I know John, as I said, at many levels, but probably most importantly as a friend.
Yeah, and I would say equally for Brett. I met Brett as independent Brett, and independent Brett being father, parent, investor, founder, creator, ball of energy. Just a really wonderful introduction that we had, and the friendship we built. But knowing everything that Brett's accomplished, albeit in finance and elsewhere, when you get close to him, nothing's more important to him than the closest relationships in his life and his family, and what he gives back. And it's really it's a treat to introduce you, knowing those things about you.
How do you guys meet?
Goes back almost a decade through an organization called Young Presidents, YPO.
YPO.
And we've both been active members in our regional chapters, and then we were brought together through a mutual friend to join in sort of what we call a forum level experience. And so John and I, for many years, were traveling literally around the world to meet 2 or 3 times a year to talk about life. And in particular, our interest as this forum went was to talk about intergenerational wealth transfer and what do we do with what we've got in terms of building our family with our wealth and watching out for the pitfalls that so many people have gone through in terms of letting wealth literally destroy their lives.
If I can use a sports analogy, I used to do an awful lot of windsurfing, and there's a big difference between a good windsurfer and a great windsurfer. In windsurfing, there's a point where you realize you don't hold that sail up. It holds you up. And you could say that a million times, but it has to click in yourself. And as soon as that clicks, it's a whole different sport. And that's when you take it to the next level. What was that clicking point in business for you? When was that epiphany?
Your description is really apt. For me, it was really the early 90s when I returned to Canada. I'd been living in the States for 5 years, came back, and it was the first time that I wasn't working directly for other people. I had a whole variety of different projects on the go. I had a whole variety of different people involved in things that I was doing that had been brought in as a result of acquisitions. And the power and leverage of other people and people that you're able to enable is mind-blowing. And when you really begin to see the effect of that, especially in a growth environment or in a business that's growing positively, it's electrifying. You get charged, and I felt like that from 91 until the day I sold my company, which was 2006.
So it's that love, finding that love as well. And what
I described it as that, like, you have 3 victories every day. You have a victory because you serve clients who love you and love your product. You have a victory because your staff who work for you love serving your clients and love the way they're treated and love the way you operate the business and are right behind the leadership and the direction of the business. And then the third victory is the shareholder. The shareholder wins. So, when you have those triple win days and weeks and months and years, it's a drug. It's a total drug, and it's you just don't ever want to stop, and you just want to keep taking the story bigger and wider, and just roping as many people as you can.
That's interesting. We'll get back to that, actually. I like that. How about you, Brett?
Well, my journey goes back to early days in Saskatchewan. Coming out of Saskatchewan, came to Alberta, and worked as an engineer for a few years, and realized I wanted to do more in the world of business than I wanted to do in terms of technical engineering. So I did a business degree and came out of that and landed in the investment banking world. And I proceeded to spend the next 20 or 25 years accumulating and complicating my life. And quite frankly, at the cost of my personal health, physical, mental, emotional, and at the cost in particular of my family. And that didn't go well. So there was an evolution over time, again, from this process of accumulate and complicate to where I'm at now. And I'm delighted to see Keith as he builds a chapter called Simplify, because the essence of my life right now is simplify, organize, harvest, and distribute. Does this simplify my life, or will it help me simplify my life? That's probably the first decision. And a lot of that is around ultimately being able to spend more time looking after my health and my family. I'm at a point in my life where I'm trying to get rid of any business that requires my time. Whatever the business is, I want to be able to put literally 100% of my faith in the management team, so that I can be literally on a moment's notice anywhere my family wants me to be. So that's kind of the evolution of my life in terms of simplify.
It's funny because from the outside looking in, you and I have known each other for quite a while now, Brett, and your Simplify looks like most people's Masochist, so I can only imagine what you were like 20 years ago. Tell me about the picture you never missed then, or the painting you never missed.
There's certainly some challenges in my life in terms of my work-life balance, but the defining moment in terms of really the awakening for me in terms of realizing that my life was in a bit of a downward spiral was one night I was stuck at home babysitting, and that first of all tells you almost everything, because I shouldn't be stuck at home, and babysitting's what other people do to your children. You parent your children. So if I'd said to you I had the privilege of being home one night looking after my kids, that's got a very different sound than being stuck at home babysitting. And the reason I was stuck is I wanted to be at an art auction, because there was a piece of art that I guess I thought would change my life, or it would complete whatever it was I was doing. And so I was annoyed that I had to be at home. And I had agreed to participate in the art auction by telephone. And about 8 o'clock, I phoned the auction house and said, "Where are we at with this Lindner?" And Peggy said, "Brett, we sold it about 10 minutes ago, and I called you 3 times. I said, "Well, what the hell? I've been home." She said, "Well, the little girl answered and said you weren't home." I remember storming up to my daughter's bedroom, and she was lying on top of the bed at the time, and again, 9 or 10 years old, doing her homework as she should be. And I don't remember what I said in the first couple of minutes. And I remember my last line, which was, "What the fuck are you doing telling someone I'm not home?" And she just looked up at me with these big brown eyes and said, "Well, you never are." It wasn't until that little girl looked at me and said, "You never are," that I realized that all that I was doing was accomplishing almost nothing. And so at that point, I did a little homework through the Young Presidents Organization, reached out to their network of skills and relationships, and ended up checking myself into a trauma and addiction treatment program down in the States, where it gave me the opportunity to relook at what I called my complete imbalance in life, which was a ill-defined, improperly defined, or maybe without proper definition in any way, my priorities, given that my priorities were all about the material trappings of wealth and status and power and career, and I had set aside family, friends, and health as something I would do after. It was pretty clear I may never get there.
Can you build then, John, I guess the empires you two have built without that obsessive focus? Is there a way to have balance in your life and still build what you built in hindsight?
It's really, really difficult. It's a tension that never, ever goes away.